All right, everyone.
Nah.
Hey, we are here at Grafana Labs. So today we have got Imma on our show. Hi, Imma.
Hello,
So,
Kabir.
so to the audience, I'll be introducing Imma to all of them. Right. So Imma, she is a staff developer advocate at Grafana Labs. Obviously, you must be knowing if you are into SRE and DevOps. What exactly is Grafana? And now in couple of us, you will be knowing who Imma is. And I'll be introducing myself. I'm Tauqeer, and I'm the co-organizer, co-lead at Grafana and Friends Delhi, which is in India. And
Nice.
I'm also a developer operations DevOps engineer at NCR at Leos, who look at all ATM across the world. So we have got our speaker, Imma. So today we'll be working on insights of Grafana things and how we are managing the incidents. Over to you, Imma. So how are you doing?
Thanks for inviting me, Kabir. It's really nice. It's a quiet Saturday, sunny in Barcelona, so I'm not complaining. So very much.
All
Thanks for organizing all this. It's much appreciated. It's also good to be online with the Delhi community.
all
So,
right, all right.
as I said, I'm a developer advocate at Grafana Labs. I'm also a very passionate community builder. So, I organize a lot of meetups and events like you do in Delhi. I do the same for the community in Barcelona. So, that's something I'm very passionate about as well. uh,
Absolutely, Ima. Exactly, Ima. Sorry to interrupt. I have seen, I'm so excited, to be with you at this podcast. Like, I've seen, so much of the work. I'll tell you honestly, when I was not in the co-organizer part, I just checked out on you on the LinkedIn. Like, hey, this is the one. She's doing so much awesome work at Grafana. Today we are at the podcast. See,
Thank you, thank you. We like organizing community events, so and meeting the community, so and sharing. So that's a great opportunity that Grafana gives me usually. So
please,
I'm
if
very
someone
happy.
is watching from New Delhi, India, please tag her. Let her know we are inviting. So today we
I
have the
might,
topic.
I might join one day in person. Yes, I need to apply for
Absolutely,
some nice conferences that you have there.
we are very okay with any of the stuff. So today we have a topic: the supercharging Grafana with the community plugins, which we are building throughout the communities, and we have a
Yes.
lot of plugins. If you have been using Grafana, and there will be much of the plugins, and we have a secrets like, hey, this is a plugin which have been built by community or something like that. So we have an overview which Ima will be covering in depth on this show. Over to you, Ima. Would love to share anything?
Thank you. So yes, we're gonna show you how to supercharge Grafana with community plugins. I think that's one of the powerful things that you get with Grafana, that you can actually create your own plugins and extend the platform. So what we're gonna do in this hopefully not too long short talk, it's introduce what Grafana plugins are, what plugin types do we have, the important thing sometimes what's the signature, what are the different signature levels, because community is one of the signature levels, but there are enterprise plugins and other types of plugins. And then we'll go into data source plugins. There are all types of plugins, but we'll narrow it down to data source, and then we'll give you show an example of a really nice community plugin. It's the Kafka plugin. And finally, we'll give you some references, so if people want to get started building their own plugins, they can. So,
Hmm.
what is, let's start with the introduction. What is Grafana? So, probably people know a lot about Grafana already. This is if people want
I
to
know.
watch this is the story of Grafana, and it's really a nice thing to do to watch. So, Grafana is basically like the Lego set of data visualization. It's an open source tool that lets you pull data from almost anywhere and turn it into interactive dashboards. So what makes it special is the Big Ten philosophy that we have. Instead of forcing you to move all your data into one specific database, Grafana goes where the data lives. So whether that's the traditional server, an IoT sensor, or a business spreadsheet, you can get the data from there. You don't have to move it in a single storage. And it's
Hmm.
incredibly extensible. This is what we're going to show today, meaning if there isn't a built-in way to show your data, there's probably a community plugin that handles it, or you can build your own plugin. Well, people mostly use it to monitor if their apps or systems are doing well. It's flexible enough to track anything from global weather patterns to the power output of a solar farm. So you can actually do lots of stuff with Grafana. Uh, you know that when we have a GrafanaCon conference every year, this year it's going to happen in Barcelona. Yes, it's happening at home. We usually
Hmm.
give the Growth Awards, the Golden Growth Awards, and this is, for example, one of the, I think it's the finalist or the winner from last year. And it's a dashboard dedicated to the International Space Station. It features real-time map of its location, live NASA video streams, detailed information about the station's crew, the altitude, the speed, and utilize multiple API calls, Python, Prometheus to gather and display data. So this shows a little bit what you can build with Grafana. It's a lot up to your imagination.
Hmm.
And this is
Right.
another example. This is from, I think it was from a PhD student in the Netherlands. He was been using
Mhm.
Grafana for a few years, and this was one of the winners, I think, in 23. And it showcases that Grafana can be used as business intelligence tools and not just for technical monitoring. So in this case, it was showing the European energy infrastructure. So you can do whatever if you have the data somewhere, you can pull it and showcase in a creative way usually. So what is a plugin? That's we're narrowing it down to what is a plugin. So a plugin is
Exactly.
basically a way to extend Grafana.
This is what I wanted to get an answer from the very Grafana people, because I'll tell you my story as well in this thing. Back in January 2025, yes, January 2025, I started with the Grafana stuffs. I was in my previous company and I had been doing the DevOps stuff, but I was not much into the SRE part, right? So then I got to explore about the Grafana, what exactly the Grafana is, because I heard from a lot of people use Grafana, but I never knew how to get it existed. I just installed it and lot of plugins and all and all and all. I just got it installed like, hey, just get it started, man. Just get it started. And at that moment, in Delhi region, I attended one event by the Grafana and Friends Delhi, to which I am the organizer now. I just attended it, I had an attendee, and got back as an organizer.
That happens a lot. It happened to me
That
when
was
I
awesome.
attended a conference for software crafters and I ended up organizing. So I guess when we
Of
start
course.
organizing is because we attend an event and say, "Oh, I like this event," and then you end up organizing. So
That happens. That happens. If you get an excitement, be a part of us any day.
exactly, if you get excited about the community, say, "Why don't help the community continue?" So it's one thing that we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You may
So
continue for the extending Grafana part.
yes, you can also extend the communities. So plugin is a way to extend Grafana. So mostly you'll see that Grafana is already using a lot of plugins that we might not be aware of. So the first thing is probably know what plugin types do we have.
Hmm.
We know
Exactly.
that plugins are ways to extend Grafana, but how what types of plugins do we have? So mostly we have three types of plugins. We have the panels, the applications, and the data sources. So we'll focus on data sources, but I thought it would be interesting also to go into what's a panel, what's an application, and then we'll go into the data source. So we'll at least know what type of
Hmm.
plugins we can build in Grafana. So panel is the one that we're most used to. When you have this a dashboard, usually you have these visualizations and the panel is this, it's the visualization and a panel option. So in the panel options, you can choose the type of panel that you want. Maybe you want a table, maybe you want a time series, maybe you want to go. So there you decide what visualization type you want. You might want a bar chart. So the panel is the way you visualize the data, and it has usually these two parts, the visualization and the panel options. And the part below the query belongs to data sources. Is when you actually connect to the data source to retrieve the data and show it here. So the panel is just the visualization part, and that's usually the part that people know the most.
Hmm.
And
Application.
apps are another type of plugin. This is usually more powerful. Um, Apps are somewhat special in terms of their flexibility. Panels are just small part in a dashboard, but apps are more flexible. They usually used to provide these three distinct features that we have here. First, the ability to provide completely custom pages within the Grafana UI, directly accessible through the
Mm-hmm.
menu application. For this, you can also use the scenes library, which allows you to create dashboard-like experiences in these pages. If you are using Grafana Cloud, you're likely more familiar with this plugin type because a lot of the applications there are built with that, like the Kubernetes monitoring. It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
Secondly, within an application, you can bundle multiple components, such as a data source and a panel. So if you want to have a bundle of different things together, it's good to do this as an application, as an app. And then you distribute just one single artifact. So users only manage the life cycle of this app instead of different subcomponents that they are very difficult to manage if they don't go together. Um, and thirdly, apps can leverage UI extensions, which allows you to register the
Mm-hmm.
functionality that parts of the Grafana UI or other applications. So you can expose it within a user's current context. So examples of these include like we have an incident applications which registers the ability to declare an incident from a panel menu. So this is also done like this. So I don't see people when they start using apps because usually building dashboards and connecting with data sources is enough. But sometimes when you want to build something that's more interactive and nicer and has a lot more complex pieces, that's when you get into apps and sometimes into scenes. The example I was telling about is this one, the Kubernetes monitoring application is a really nice application we have on cloud. And it's not just a dashboard; it's a combination of dashboard. It has integrated other stuff, like it can calculate the cost for your infrastructure. It can calculate emissions. So it has a lot of pieces that go together, and you can only do that if you build an app. So when you need to build something that's more complex, you usually will build an app. But that's not
All
usually
right.
how you start building plugins. This is probably the next step once
Hmm.
you fall short
Next
on
step.
something. So let's get into the data sources, which is the one that we wanted to focus on. Sorry.
Most important part, like literally for in my organization, we already gets messed up with the data sources. I'll take an example, like we had to deploy most of the ATMs around the European region.
Mm.
And what happened one last like couple of nights back, that we set up our clustering monitor and we were able to see it over the Azure Kubernetes services. Correct. Now we had a front end using the Grafana only, and for last 2 hours, me along with my manager were like coding like why it is not being shown until unless do not get P1, because we were so scared that we don't get the P1, and we were not able to get the proper data process for 2 hours. And you told me like not to disclose this anyone, and I'm doing this in live.
Now you have to cut it from the video.
Cut it.
Or maybe they'll find it. It's difficult to find. There's so many information on the internet that videos are difficult to find. Don't worry.
No problem.
So yeah, no problem. So let's continue maybe with data sources. You didn't say that. We didn't hear it.
All
So
right.
data sources, as I told you before, it's when you have a panel, the part below where you build a query, that's where the data source is involved. That's where you connect with the data source, like the database or wherever you have the data. In this case, it's Prometheus, where we usually store metrics. So this is where you configure where the visualizations will get the data from, and you can make queries there, and you can actually retrieve the data that you want. So uh, before we finish the section with data sources, we should probably discuss front end versus back end plugins in case that you are gonna you get excited after this talk and you're gonna build your own plugin. Back in the day, there were only front-end plugins. They were written in Angular. I think which after Grafana 12, this is officially completely gone. Now everything is React-based. But around Grafana 7, we introduced the ability for plugins to include also a server-side component written in Go, which communicates with the main Grafana process over gRPC. And obviously, writing a plugin into languages now, because we have JavaScript and Golang, adds a little bit of complexity. And sometimes front-end only is perfectly viable for a simplistic data source or whilst you're getting
Mhm.
started. But generally, having the server-side component opens up a ton of additional capabilities. Most fundamentals are adding support for alerting or connecting to APIs which don't use HTTP, but there's a lot of things that you can do once you have a backend.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Imma, like we have been talking more about the front end only and the back end plugin. Like, why is it strictly for us to directly build any backend plugin? Like you just said, like it's
It,
quite important, and
it's
then
it's not
also I
ma-
think
it's
that
not mandatory.
it's not
I mean,
mandatory,
it's not
right?
mandatory, but you can start with front end. Actually, my colleagues started the interactive learning plugin, and they started with front end. My developer
All right,
advocates team.
and
But
and
at some time they had to move to backend because they really need some functionalities that only they could build in the backend. So it depends a lot on what you're building. You can start with front end if it's very simple, and then move to add the backend as well.
and Imma, like, hey, Imma, like there had been a question around like what languages should I or the audience should need to learn like to build all these plugins, right? What could be the possibilities?
Yeah, the thing is for backend you need JavaScript and React now, so you need to know React as well. And for the backend you need to know Golang. So you probably need to master both, and that's the thing.
But
But I think now with Cloud Code and all the helps we have with AI, I guess it's becoming a little easier to build things, even if you don't master something. So I
got
guess
it.
that's it. I mean, if you know
Obviously,
JavaScript, you can start with front end. If you know JavaScript and React,
huh,
you can start with front end. And then once you need something that needs the backend, we strongly recommend people do backend plugins because you have more options. But if you know JavaScript and you don't want to go into Golang, it's a good way to start with just a front end plugin.
got it. And in fact, for the back one, we have the Golang ready.
Yes, so that's
So
Golang in the backend.
it's
So
already mostly it's in our hand how we are directive make the directive to all these languages and use the most of the Grafana, right?
yes,
Cool.
so a little bit of details. Looking at the key components. If we start with the front end only data source so that we can see how things change when we added the backend. First, all plugins, regardless of the type, have a plugin JSON, which contains static meta information about this plugin, things like the name and which versions of Grafana it's compatible with. In addition to the config and query editor for the data source, which is what we saw in the UI, the query part, you also need to implement the check health and query data functions for the data source. Check health is used to verify that the plugin is configured correctly and working as expected. So you can try hitting the target API and determine what constitutes a good response. It's what it's called when users hit save and test. That we'll see that in the demo. When you have a data source, you have a button that says save and test. That hits the check health API. So you can decide what is a healthy plugin, what query do you want to put
Hmm.
in there. And then query data is, as you might expect, it's used to run the query to get, as defined by the user, against the target service. So this is where you get the data.
All right.
If you go to a backend plugin, the changes that we have when you add the backend, we still have the config editor and the query editor defined in the front end. However, the check health and query data are now implemented in the backend. And this is the ability to execute the query on the backend, which opens up the door to things like alerting, and you don't need to initiate the request through the browser. So in addition, as mentioned with apps, you can also add custom endpoints via the call resource functionality. This can be useful for fetching a schema or other resources when constructing queries, for example. So the backend has a lot more functionalities. So it's that's why I said
Hmm.
you have more options if you implement a backend plugin, but it's up
Got it.
to
Got
what
it.
you need to do actually. So,
Got it. Got it.
and that's probably
Mixed,
the one thing I love about
mixed and
Grafana.
matches. Mhm. Exactly.
You can query so many different data sources. So if you have a favorite data source, you'll probably
Mm,
find an extension, a
mm.
plugin that actually allows you to retrieve data, Postgres, MySQL, Oracle. We even have the Infinity plugin that actually allows us to retrieve data from JSON APIs or CSVs, things like that. So there's a lot of options already built, and if one is missing, you can always write it yourself. But I think we have almost, I think, 180 plugins now between Grafana and community ones. So there's a lot of plugins, data source
Hmm.
plugins that you can use. So it's quite interesting. Which ones do you use at work?
At work, we usually use Go for the our Datadog and Splunk
Okay.
and GitHub usually, and go for the
Oh,
Google Cloud.
oh, that's a lot already.
Is most
So
of
that
it because our infra is quite complex for the ATM structures. So we look off for most of the shares. And recently when I got hired, like we were also into the service now, so we have integrated service now
no,
as well. It's quite
that's the
good. It's
thing. I
amazing.
mean, you can have different vendors, and you can have just one platform to visualize things. So I find it very useful. Instead of moving all the data around, which sometimes is not possible, it's easier if you can
Mm.
go and retrieve data from different places.
All right, all right.
So before we get into the example of a plugin, I promise that we will go into signatures. So one thing,
Hmm.
if you wanna, I put the QR code here. If people wanna check, we'll also see that in the demo. That if you wanna check what data sources already exist or what type of plugins already exist, they can go into Grafana plugins and check what's in there. Before building your own, you can actually check if it already exists. For example, here we see the Google Sheets, Snowflake, Jira. So there's a lot of plugins that you can actually use without building it yourself. And
All
this is
right.
sometimes probably the most important part if you want to understand plugins. We're going to focus here on community plugins. Those are the ones that are created by users or organizations, but they have no commercial relationship with Grafana and it's maintained by them. So the person supporting the plugins is the plugin authors. You don't need an enterprise license and they are distributed in the catalog, so you can actually just import them in Grafana. There are
Mm.
also the Grafana plugins that are maintained by Grafana Labs, and those are like, I think, 60 plugins that we have. And they are open source. The Grafana ones are open source, and we have some that are not, that you require an enterprise license, which are the enterprise plugins. They are commercial from other vendors that is not us, and they
Mhm.
support them. And you can also write your own plugins. I mean, if you are working at a company, you are air gapped and you actually don't want to publish anything on the internet, you want to have your own plugins, you can develop your own plugins and just use them and do not release them anywhere on the
Mm.
catalog. So it's not mandatory to have them on the
Um,
catalog.
Correct. To the audience, like if they ask out, like how do we like distinguish around the community plugins or the Grafana plugin? What if we like write any plugin and publish it? Where they will be counted in community plugin or the Grafana plugin?
So if you don't have a commercial relationship with Grafana, this is going to be a community plugin if it's supported by the
Mhm.
authors.
Mhm.
Commercial plugins usually are a partnership agreement between Grafana Labs and the vendor, and typically by
Mhm.
with a fee. But both are in the catalog. So the important thing is what we saw here. That actually maybe in the previous page, you can actually go here and say, okay, level enterprise. So you actually can select there what level of plugin you wanna use. So the important thing is that you know when you're selecting a plugin, if it's a community plugin, if it's Grafana supported, you can actually
Mhm.
see it in the catalog. So that's the
All right.
difference
All
usually
right.
is that.
All right.
So if you want something supported by Grafana, select a Grafana as a plugin that has a signature of Grafana. If you like community plugins, the one that we'll present, the Kafka one, is very successful plugin. Have been
Mhm.
downloaded many times, but it's a community plugin. It doesn't have to be supported. There are very awesome
Supported. Yeah.
community plugins. So I we
Well,
really love the extensions that we get.
let us get
So
seated and let's try it out.
So one thing, if you want to get started, is go to the developers portal and go into plugin tools, and then you'll find all the information that you need to get started. How to build your own extension. So I would start here if you wanna start. So let's go into the data source plugins because that's the distinction I didn't know a while back. I always thought that the plugins were query based, so that you wrote a query and the query was pool based. But then I found out that there also are streaming plugins. So the Grafana data source plugins can get be categorized in these two main types, the query-based and the streaming. And the fundamental difference lies in their approach to data retrieval and how they update the visualizations. Uh, the query base is the most traditional, most common type of data source. I think everyone knows them. It works on a pool-based model. Grafana sends a query to the data source, and the data source returns a one-time response with the requested data. So
Hmm.
Grafana explicitly requests data by sending the query. To keep
Mhm.
the panels updated, we rely on a refresh interval. So you in the dashboards or in the panel, you configure the refresh interval 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 minute. And Grafana repeatedly sends the same query at this interval every time. Like 5 seconds pass, it sends another time the query. So another 5 seconds,
Oh.
it sends the query again. So this is how it usually works. It's good for historical data. This model is excellent for querying and visualizing historical data, because if you want to see yesterday's data, just select in the panel, I want yesterday's data from this hour to that hour, and it sends the
Mm.
query to the data source. So this is the usual use case that we see, but it could be inefficient for large data sets, so it depends a lot. And the
Mhm.
streaming data source are push-based model, where the data source sends a continuous flow of data to Grafana as soon as it becomes available. So this is often implemented using
Mm.
technologies like WebSockets.
All
And
right.
that data is pushed to Grafana in real time. So when data arrives, it's sent to Grafana, and you don't have to keep polling
Grafana.
to get the data. So it just shows in Grafana.
All
The
right.
visualization updates are triggered by new data events. So when a new data event happens, not
Mm.
it doesn't happen when it's not based on refreshing every 30 seconds. Every time a new event arrives, it will be sent to Grafana. So it's more
Mm.
event based. It's
Again, base.
specifically designed for real time dashboards and applications where low latency visualization is critical, like monitoring live sensor data, IoT devices, log tailing sometimes. So it depends a lot on what you want to do. In the case that we'll see, it's a Kafka visualization. So if we want to see what event do we have in Kafka, we can use this streaming mechanism, which is more efficient than the query
Hmm.
one.
Query ones.
So this is why I chose Kafka community plugin for this talk, because I wanted to show one that was not the usual query a data source, but a streaming plugin. So I will not
Okay.
get into
Wait.
details of how this is built. Sorry, you have a question or?
Like you just said, like it's a streaming data source. Kafka one. Any other dating source are available?
Uh, of others that are good for streaming is usually the ones that use MQTT, like message queuing, telemetry transport. This is a lightweight, publish, subscribe network protocol designed for machine-to-machine communication, IoT. So that's usual
Mm-hmm.
cases. We see, for example, for livestock, when you are checking stock market, for example, for the livestock tickers, for chat applications, if you wanted to do a chat, for IoT sensor data. So there's a lot of applications that where you can use a streaming one. So it depends a lot on if polling is works better for you, or if you want to have real time data. So that's usually the main
That
difference. They usually
got
use
it. Got
WebSockets so to push data.
push the
So
data. Correct.
so as I said, this is we're not going to go here into how this was built, because you can go into Hamed Karbasi's GitHub
Mhm.
repo. Is the main maintainer for this plugin. If you're interested in knowing how this is built and how to build your own, I suggest you go there and have a look at the code. I left a QR code here for people if you want to have a look as well. It's the same as the GitHub repo.
Mhm.
Um, as I said, it's a very successful plugin. It has more than 2 million downloads. So he was pretty
Two
surprised, like,
million
oh, I
dollars.
have a lot of downloads. It's a pretty cool dashboard, because usually it's not monitoring Kafka, which is the usual thing we're used to. It's not, it's visualizing real-time Kafka events in Grafana. So you can actually see the data that you have in Kafka in Grafana. It's not monitoring, which is the usually use case we are used to. And for that, we can use other data
Mhm.
sources. But this one, it's really nice because you can actually see what's in Kafka,
Ah,
and you can build your own dashboards with the events that you have in Kafka, and it's pretty cool. So
like
I didn't know about
this is
this. Sorry.
So amazing, like a dream of every maintainer, like 2 million plus downloads.
Yeah, he was very happy. Like, oh, I just checked it because he gave this presentation in one of our meetups in Stockholm,
Haha.
and
Mhm.
I share the video later because you can actually have a look. Because there he explained how he built this plugin. In this
Mhm.
talk, I'm not focused on that because he does a better job at explaining his own plugin. So we have this recorded, and it's really nice if you want to see it. And he was like super surprised because preparing for that talk, he went and looked at how many downloads he had because he said, really, I don't get a lot of features or a lot of requests, and I don't know. And then he went and checked and said, wow, I have a lot of downloads. But that means it
Like,
works, and it doesn't mean that you have to have a lot of issues and requests on your repo. People are just using it, and they are not contributing to it. So that
correct,
was a
correct.
really interesting thing. So if you have any
Exactly.
request for him, this is an open source project, so you can always go and help Hamed.
Absolutely, absolutely. The very nice thing after this one to connect Hamid.
So before we go into a little bit just about Kafka, not the focus of this talk either, but just in case someone doesn't know the basics, Kafka is a
Mhm.
distributed event streaming platform. So it's for large volumes of data in real time. You have on the left the producers, they publish, they write to Kafka, and on the right we have the consumers, they consume the data. How data is organized inside the Kafka cluster is we have topics, which are like categories where records, so events are published. And then partitions, like we have topic A with partition 0, partition 1. The partitions are ordered, are immutable sequences of records on these topics. And each message in a partition has a unique sequential ID, which is the offset, and that's sometimes we'll see that in our dashboards that it asking us about this offset. So it's the order in the partition. We can consume events from the beginning, or we can consume events from an offset, or the latest event. So that's what
Mhm.
we'll see in the demo. And I think it's demo time now.
Perfectly. We had
Anything
been waiting for this.
that's the fun part probably. Let's see. Let's go to first the Grafana plugins, which I promised we'd have a look. So if you go into this Grafana plugins page, you can. This is the catalog of
Mhm.
plugins. You say, okay, I'd like to see the
Mhm.
data source one. So you'll see ClickHouse. You'll see a lot of data source. Here is what I said. There's the Grafana Labs created. There's the community created. Those are the partners. So that goes
Correct.
into the signatures. And if you go to enterprise, you would go here. So if you go Grafana Labs
Mhm.
Enterprise, you'd see what plugins do we have, but those are enterprise. So when they are enterprise, it means that you need a license to run them. So it depends a lot on
Mhm.
if you are community created, you won't find any that are enterprise. So community created, there's a lot of plugins here just for data sources, and this is Hamet's, the Kafka one. If you want to look, usually you can go here and say, do we have anything for Redis? No. Do we have a Kafka
That
one?
is
We have a Kafka.
all right.
So
We have for the Kafka one.
in here's how you get here. So you could check if something is in there in general or not. And here you would get all the information for this plugin, how you can install it, and everything. So the first thing usually you do when you want to use plugins is it's going to say what version of Grafana you need to do the minimum version. So that's the important thing that you probably need to find how to install and everything. So also, as I mentioned, go to this developers portal and you'll have a lot of how to get started. So if you want to create a plugin, it will tell you how to create like a basic plugin. I think these tutorials are really interesting because if you want to build a data source plugin, you go in here and here you will create like the first data source plugin, like just scaffolding. But it's interesting because it's if you want to build one, you start
Mm.
here. Let's just go here
All.
and create one. This is the
Mhm.
repo from Hamed, where we have the plugin. We'll not go into that a lot, but if you
Mhm.
want to look at the code, you can come here and look at the source code. And if
Mhm.
you have any issues, just come here and and report some issues or help him with a pull request. So Everyone can
It's
contribute. So
is always a good practice to first read the issue. What are the available issues there? Is it open or not? Or what are the community
yeah,
talks has been going on? Like, hey, what has been discussion till yet? And then if you're looking forward, you can contribute to this part of the code, then create the code, ask them a contributor or directly to the man who is managing this resource, then raise a pull request against it. That's a very good practice around in the open source.
exactly. So if you find a bug, maybe you already know how to fix it. You can propose, "Hey, I found a bug and I think I
Mhm.
know how to fix it," or "I just found a bug and I don't have an idea." You just open the issue. So, and if you find something that is a feature that has been requested, like I'd like support for JSON schema registry.
Hmm.
If you need it and you see it here, maybe you can propose, "Okay, do you think I could help you with that?" It's good to,
Very
it's how open source works.
very perfect. Like you propose this thing up, or if you see here's this is bug and I can contribute to this part, just assign this to yourself, take your time, build a code, and just raise a pull request, and maintainer will check it. So if
And
available,
also,
they
he's
will
following
accept
a
it.
very good he's following the very good practices, which is good first issues.
Good
This
first
label
issue.
tells you if you're starting with open source or with this project, he's already saying, "Hey, these two are easy or good ways to get started with the project." So if you want to help,
Correct.
usually open source projects will always have this good first time issue. And if you find anything labeled like that, you can go there and say, "Commander, hey, I'd like to work on this one." And the maintainers usually go, "Okay, go ahead." And then you
Go
can,
ahead, take your
that's
time and
usually, they mark the ones that are easier to contribute to. You. That's really nice.
contribute to it. Correct. At
And
my
then,
time back in 2021, I used to take the good first issue usually for the documentation and a small feature. Then I tried to raise a pull request. Out of 10, 4 to 5 was accepted and 6 were rejected.
well, that's
it,
good.
it helped me to raise my development skills.
Yeah.
And this I
Yeah.
believe you level up.
Yeah, sometimes even contributing something in the documentation. I mean, it doesn't have to be like very complicated code contribution. Anything that you can contribute, people are
Hmm.
happy.
Correct.
So for the demo, my colleague Tom actually wrote this nice demo using Hamed's plugin. So if anyone wants to actually install the demo, you just have to go to this repo, like Grafana Kafka Data Source demo from Tom, and it's very easy to run. I mean, you just run a Docker Compose app. It's running this Docker Compose, which
Mhm.
is going to run a zookeeper with Kafka. It creates some topics. We are also running Red Panda because we can see what's in Kafka
Mhm.
outside of Grafana. And then we have a
Mhm.
producer that actually creates some messages. In this case, it creates in pavements because it's as a default it creates pavements. But what's nice is that he actually created. This is the architecture that we have here. We have some Kafka
Mhm.
topics that send to Kafka, Zookeeper. We have Red Panda, if you want to watch. We have Grafana, and we have data generator. So the data generator is interesting because you can simulate metrics,
Mhm.
you can simulate IoT traffic, you can simulate sensor readings,
Mhm.
you can simulate logs as well, or payments, which is the one that we'll see in the demo, or you can have some data user activities. So if
Oh,
you
that's
just change the Docker Compose here, and instead of saying payments, you say I want user data. You go into here instead of mode payments, you say mode users, and you get user data.
mhm.
So it's
Correct. Correct.
a really nice way to have some different data. And because
Mhm.
it comes already with a Grafana in here, we have some dashboard pre-provision. So you'll see that the data source is already configured. So when you start Grafana, you don't need to install anything. The dashboards will be there, and the Kafka plugin will already be there. So when you run this with a Docker Compose app, you get all the
Mhm.
everything pre-configured. So you really can
All right.
just plug and play the demo. So
That's enough.
I'm already running it locally. So what we
Mhm.
see here, if we use Red Panda, which is the first thing we had in this architecture here,
In this architecture, Red
we
Panda.
have we have
Uh,
Red
mhm.
Panda is just we're just running a container so we can see what are the latest messages. I don't know if the
It
latest
was
is going to work.
already mentioned the same in the Docker Compose file as well.
Yes, it's in the Docker Compose file as well. So let's check that. But yeah, it's Docker Compose also has Red Panda in there. So
Correct. I just had a
yeah, I
view
think
as well.
it's probably somewhere here. Red Panda, it's an image. The Red Panda image, it's a visualizer for Kafka that people usually use. So as you can see, if you had Red Panda, you could check what Kafka is receiving. In this case, we are using the payment messages. So we have an amount, we have the account, currency, if it's authorized, the transaction is authorized or not, the user and the timestamp. So we would see a lot of payment transactions, fake payment transactions. And since we have this in Kafka, it's nice if we can actually visualize them with Grafana. So to be able to visualize them with Grafana, you actually need to have here in the connections a data source. In this case, I'm already there, but if you go to connections, usually in the menu, now it's going slow. Let's see if I can
Oh,
reload it.
it
Yes,
usually happen.
demos are like that. So here we only have this one, the Kafka one. And it's usually very easy to configure. You bootstrap the server, you decide what security protocol is using, SSL. In this case, it's plain text. And this is what I mentioned in the presentation with the health check. If you hit a save and test here, it's going to say, hey, the data source is configured. I can reach Kafka. I actually can reach Kafka. So this is the health check that you implement in your plugin. This is the query that you would say, hey, Grafana is actually connecting to Kafka. If I put
Kafka.
here, for example, 90, if I do save and test, it's going to say, this is not working. So
Not
this
working.
is the thing that you need to do, check that it's connecting. But once you have that, you already have the data. So
Mm-hmm.
now that we have the data, usually we could go and explore the data. So if you go to the usual Grafana Explore, in this case, we are exploring not a query plugin, but a streaming plugin. So if in our case the topic is called test, then we start seeing the same that we see actually in Red Panda, but we see it in here. It's as you can see, the events keep coming in. So every time there is a new
Keep
event,
coming
they
in.
just show. So you don't have to actually check all the time. It's just automatically all the time checking if new events coming, they just arrive here. So you can
Yeah.
see live all the things that are incoming. One
Correct. Correct.
thing that
Correct.
we can do is really nice because you could actually add this to a dashboard if you wanted, but what we'll see is already a dashboard that's already been built, so it doesn't take as long for us.
Mm-hmm.
So let's load it again, I think. Let's risk it. So you'll see that we have no
Oh.
data, but immediately there's one entering
Mm.
because this is not querying for the old data. It's waiting for new data. So every time that I actually do that, it's going to start, there is
Mm-hmm.
no data. So every time a new event arrives, so in this case, authorized, this is the
Authorized the
amount.
data.
And now we have here total status. So if we wait a little bit, we'll see that we have three different status. So that's a dashboard we can build using this plugin. And what I wanted to go
And
instead of
data is being generated by the data generator as mentioned the architecture, right? Using the goal.
yes, yes, this is data that comes from Kafka. What we are doing is telling Kafka, give me the latest elements.
Kafka.
And
Hmm.
we could actually tell it, don't give me the latest elements. Instead of the latest, we could say, okay, give me the earliest elements. So I think and then it gives you the earliest elements, the ones that
Earliest.
started at the different times. Or you could say, I want the last N messages. I want the last 100 messages. So it would
100
start
messages.
with the last 100. So in this case, we are doing the latest, but you have different
Uh,
options for this plugin. And that's why, because this dashboard is configured to the latest, it waits until the
latest.
first comes in. And then when it comes in, it gives you all the new ones that are being generated because I have the generator running on the background. The producer is producing events all the time. So one thing it's
Correct.
nice to see. That's why I wanted to. We wanted to actually provide this dashboard because we can show instead of creating live the dashboards, which would take a little bit of time. It shows how every panel is created. So, for example, if you go for this one, this is the total amount of transactions. So every time you get a new transaction that says 30, 50, 100, it keeps calculating the cumulative of this. As you can see, this is just a topic test, the latest, the same that we have when we are exploring. But the key here is first that we decided to use the stat here. We could use different visualizations, but we wanted a stat. A stat is this one that shows this, and then it keeps showing here the stat when it's growing. And the tricks are in the transformation here. The query is always the same, but the transformation is what allows us to treat the data differently and show it differently. So first thing is what we want to see. We want the time and we want the amount. We don't want any other fields. So we'll be accumulating the amount over time. So that what we do is hide all the other elements and we just keep the amount and the time. And once we have that, the second is the calculation. So we have a cumulative function and say, okay, we want to do a cumulative, we'll be summing up all the amounts and we'll have the total of the amount. So this is basically how you build this one. So we have here the total amount since we started watching the data. So you'll see that it keeps growing because every time a new event comes in, it's going to be summing the amount that we have. What is the amount here? The amount that we have here, 200, is going to be summing in there. 266, so it's going to be increasing that value in this value of transactions.
Okay, to the interpreter. Okay, got
so
it.
It's just, if you wanted to know how much money you have, then you would have the total of money with this visualization. We have a lot of money. Then this one, the total status.
Hope this drops in the bank account.
Probably it's a little bit tricky because it's a total amount, but it's not the authorized amounts. It's actually all of the transactions. So if I had to build this one, I would probably say, okay, not all, because some failed and some are pending. So, but this is just a dummy example. So this, how you build this one, it's a little bit similar. It's the same query. I'm getting from the topic test the latest messages. And in the transformations, we first do a group by, because we want to group by the different status that we have, and we are doing a count. So we want to know how many authorized, how many failed, how many pending. So we do the group by, and then we partition by values. So we say, okay, I'm going to partition by values, which are the 3 values. So we get a count of each, and then we have a partition of the different status we have. So this is the field status. So probably if we don't put the status here, it doesn't work. So when we select the field, it actually does. And the colors and how we see it, it's something that we can configure here. So we can override here in the visualization. In this case, it's a stat visualization again. So we can actually override one. It's going to be a single color blue. So this is the authorized. So this is saying when the status count is authorized, paint it in blue. So this is how we paint it in blue. If you want to paint it, the failed ones, we want to paint it red. When the status count is failed, paint it in red. So this is how we actually configure the colors that we see here. Status count pending, we want orange. So if I set, instead of orange, I want yellow, we get yellow. So that's something that we can change very easily here. So back to the last one. This one is just a table, the same table that we had here, actually. But the difference is that we have some colors. So how do we put these colors? It's a very similar mechanism. We have a table in this case instead of a stat. We get the table, and it's the same. I mean, we have override here, and we say, okay, authorized, pending, fail. In the case of the status one, this column status, we're going to use blue for authorized, orange for pending. The same thing. If I wanted yellow, I would just change here yellow. Whatever we wanted to do, it's changed here. And the other thing that we can override, it's in this case, we have this amount, and we have decided that at a certain value, we want to paint it in another color. So I think it's above 100, we want to paint it orange. Just to know that some transactions are of higher value. It's the same. Value mappings here for the field amount. And if it's up to 100, the value, we do nothing. We could do, I don't know, I want it in green. And if it's above, it's this color, so you can actually change whatever you want it here.
All right.
So that's mostly it. So with once you have a data source, you can actually grab your data, use the different visualizations to organize the information in the way that you want. In this case, we wanted to showcase the amount of money that we have, the type of transactions that we have. And then in this table, we wanted something more visual where you can actually see if the amount is too high or something like that. So you can actually build what you need. And I think
Exactly.
that's
Well, i- i- in our organization as well, we usually use these types of fabrications as well. At the moment, like we need to check a number of transition, how the ATMs are going well and good, failed, upscaled, authorized, pending, and whatever we have the successful one. And if they're going down and the business hours, we get an alert directly using the Grafana or even the Splunk. Like, hey, please check it. Hey, SRE team, please check it. Have a look. And that's our
so.
works begins.
I think that's all with the demo. Yes, this is all with the demo.
That was
Before
a
we
cool
go,
demo.
if you want to play with Grafana, we have this playgrafana.org. Actually, if you don't want to,
Mm.
because sometimes we're missing data, we want to see how, for example, if
Hmm.
you're going to play with Kubernetes monitoring, you can come here and
Mhm.
actually, if there is data, you might see data. We'll see because maybe there is no data today, but sometimes there is
Okay.
data. So let's see if we have any clusters. I might not be lucky today because I didn't check. No. Oh,
All right.
sometimes
All right.
they don't
Oh.
have data, but usually what they do, it's nice. That's the usual demo problem when you don't try to ask something before it starts. It's a little bit slow today. Let's see what's going on. So
It usually takes time
usually
because.
this should have data, but yeah, you can go here and say, okay, I want data source examples, the Infinity data source, the GitHub data source. So you could probably come here and say, I want to see how the GitHub plugin works. So you could come
Mhm.
here and see a very nice dashboard, and without even logging in, you can edit the plugin, the dashboards and the panels and see how they work. So if you
Mhm.
wanted here instead of Grafana, you want to say something else, you can probably do instead of Grafana, you can do Grafana Loki. So you can probably change this and it might work.
It might work.
So
Okay.
that it worked. So
Oh, that's
it's
good.
something that you can use to play with. Like I like to play with it. Okay, come here and just play with it. And you can play with the different options here, so you can actually see how things work, because sometimes you don't have the data or you have not installed what you wanted. So I think that this
Mhm.
is a cool thing as well. If you come to Grafana Play, you'll find a lot of examples for data
Mhm.
sources and for
Examples.
other plugins. And usually we showcase
All
the
right.
nice dashboard. So that is usually a dashboard of the month. This is done by my
Mhm.
colleague Simon for the UK Trader series. So usually it's a nice place if you want to just try things out. It's a good place to get
That's it out.
started without having to install
Get started
everything.
with it. Hmm.
And
All
the other
right.
thing
All
that
right.
you might find interesting is we have our Growth AI. So anytime you have a question about Grafana, you can come here and
Hmm.
ask where is something in the documentation, for example. Is there a Kafka plugin for Grafana? Maybe it's gonna tell us where it is. So that's one thing. If you don't know where things are, yes, Grafana has a Kafka data source, so Kafka data source for Grafana. So it will tell you
Ah.
some things, right? Usually it uses the documentation. I think in this case it's gonna tell you, oh, this is I don't know if it's the data source one. Yeah, it's getting us to the Hamex plugin, so that's really nice. So if you don't know sometimes where things are, our growth is an AI that it's
Mhm.
also only using our documentation, GitHub repos, and things like have the real information. And usually, if it doesn't find anything, it doesn't hallucinate, and it tells you based on the documentation and the sources I have configured, I don't find an answer for what you're looking for. So it's usually very honest. So that's also something that people can use if they wanna
All right. This is cool.
play a little bit.
Yeah. uh. So we. So the people who might be watching this and including me have now met Grot, new friend.
You should meet Grot. Grot is very useful. I use it a lot. Like even sometimes I'm at the booth at the Grafana conference, and then
Uh-huh.
people come and ask you so many things. I cannot know everything about Grafana. And I open my phone and we look at growth, and sometimes it gives us the perfect answer. It's like, oh my God,
Mm.
we didn't know that. And it gives you the place in the documentations and all the where you can find that. And it's
Mm.
like, okay, thank you very much.
Thank
So
you very much.
sometimes it works. So
Exactly.
it's a good place if you don't know where to find something. I usually go here first, and then if I cannot find it here, then I have
Hmm.
to figure it out.
I,
But it's
I've
you
seen
can even send,
AI.
I have this configuration and it's giving me this error. So you can even ask to troubleshoot. Like I have this configuration with this component and it's giving me this error, and it sometimes gives you a really good answer. Like, okay.
Huh.
So it's a
Eh,
good place.
I hope it doesn't take our position as a Grafana champion.
It's good. It's good. So that's a bit with the demo, I think. As I said, this is the Stockholm meetup that we did with Hamed, and he did a really good
Mm,
explanation of how he built the plugin and what it does and what it doesn't. So if you have
mhm.
the time, it's like 20 minutes and it's a really good presentation. Hamed is a great speaker. And
Perfect then.
for people who wanted to get started, I'll just leave you these links just in case people need them,
Mhm,
where you to find all the plugins, how to extend and customize Grafana, a blog that we have, where to find this Kafka Data Source plugin, the meetup that we just shared, and how to build your data source plugins. These are the examples that I show how to build a data source plugin, build a logs data source plugin, a streaming data source
mhm.
plugin. So there are some examples in the documentation if you want to get started. That it's exactly what you need to
It's
get
exactly
started
what we
then. And we have playgrafana.com, which is where you can find some demos. If you don't want to install everything and find some data, you usually have data, sometimes not, like in Kubernetes, but
correct.
usually you do.
Here you go for that
Uh,
Grafana player demo.
the developers portal is the main thing usually, and here are the slides in case anyone wants to download them. Here are the slides
Hmm.
available. That's it.
Fox can take up the slides from here, and
Yeah.
we do connect with Imma for any of the queries around, and we'd love to connect with me as well. You can reach out to LinkedIn, Twitter anytime. I'll try to bridge you to the
Yes.
Grafana people, or even if my pocket or my possibility, I'd love to help them all. So see you
Yes.
at Barcelona, Ima.
See you at Grafanacon, probably. Are you
Ah,
coming to Grafanacon?
I'm trying so hard. I'm trying so hard with Eva.
Thanks, okay. Hopefully, we'll see some of you. If you are there, stop by and say hi. I should be there because I live in Barcelona. They cannot. They cannot not
If,
have me there.
if I step in there, I'll ask a lot of questions around that you cannot get a time to use grot.
We have an Ask Me Anything. Usually, we have an Ask Me Anything booth where the experts are. So if you have a lot of questions, go to Grafanacon and just stay all day in the booth asking questions to the people. We have
All
like
right,
some
all
people
right.
dedicated to answering questions for all sorts of stuff, which is really cool.
Hmm.
Because you can come with concrete questions and you'll find the engineers who actually build the product and they help you with the questions. So that's really nice.
Hmm. Hmm. This is amazing. Like to the Fox, I'll recommend like you can get with the Grafana. You can go to play.grafana.com and start with the Grafana journey today only. And
Mm.
for any queries, you can reach out to me and Nima any day. And since you have learned more about the Grafana, like you can build a application, take the metric, do the data source, and present on your front end and impress your people around. That is all we can do, and we are building more and more at Grafana. I have seen like there have been a lot of pitches into the AI segment. Recently I get a talk on MCP Grafana. I had a video as well
Nice.
on that, so that was has been amazing. People had reached out to me, and that has a lot of reaction around it. So
Nice.
that is all, that
MCPs
is
are
all.
MCPs are are a hype now. So anything
Mm.
AI.
Anything AI is a hype now, and we have to use it.
We have to use it.
So,
I mean, that's very useful. I mean, I'm not complaining. Even for my work, it's very useful to build demos quickly, to prepare a presentation, to brainstorm for a presentation. To like
mhm.
Grot, find where the information is. You go to Grot and say, "Hey, Grot, where where do I find this in the documentation?" And it's really
Exactly.
helpful. It's
Exactly, very
at least
helpful.
it's helping us be more efficient. So can't complain.
Mm, correct,
So
correct,
thanks
Ritesh.
very much for inviting us. It's been a really nice chat. I hope it's
And
useful.
thanking you for being here on like Imma, like on 14th of February, Saturday. You took your time and let it be here. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the folks who will be watching up this up. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye. Let me stop